everyone. Babula and I are back again and talking about the astrology for June. And we've got a really big weekend coming up this weekend, haven't we, Babula? With the
We certainly do.
Yeah, so take it away. What's happening?
Okay. Yes, it is. It's a big weekend. And if any of you watching and listening to this are on social media, and some are, some aren't, you'll have seen many posts about the solstice and eclipse this weekend. And so, you know, most people will be aware of it. It's like a big story. Just because it's going to be a really potent and important eclipse. So I think I might just give a little bit of a brief piece about eclipses themselves. And many people watching this will be aware of eclipses, but solar eclipses occur only ever on a full moon, on a new moon, I beg your pardon. So a solar eclipse happens on a new moon, a lunar eclipse happens on a full moon, but not every new moon is an eclipse. So, and not every full moon is an eclipse. Eclipses occur every 6 months at new and full moons because they have to align with the nodes, with the north and south node of the moon. And that only happens every 6 months. And it's like the new moon. And so when I write anything about an eclipse, I always write it and speak it in this way. I'll say the new moon solar eclipse, because we know how important new and full moons are, but when you've got that new or full moon forming an eclipse with the nodes, the energy of it is intensified, magnified, so much more powerful, and at times even quite extreme. And, you know, historically, astrologers, the Babylonians, you know, thousands of years ago, had eclipses completely sussed out. No computers, they worked out their own tables by observation over long periods of time. They had the big cycles of eclipses pinpointed, all worked out, knew exactly when they occurred, how they occurred, why they occurred. It's quite remarkable, really. And eclipses were always regarded, and still are, as doorways, portals, catalysts for change. Things happen. And in the world, things get very intense. It's like as if we needed any more of that in 2020, but clearly we do because it's happening. It's just...
No more.
I know, that's right. So whenever I write anything and post it on Facebook, sometimes that's a response like, oh God, how much more can we take? But, you know, we're all here at this time on Earth, and there's no accident. I personally feel like it's an honour to be here at this time on Earth. I'm actually grateful to be here to participate in and witness this massive death and rebirth and transition that humanity and the world are going through. So this eclipse is a significant piece of this. And the reason this particular eclipse, and for those of us on the east coast of Australia, on the eastern side of Australia, living in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, the actual eclipse, the moment of the eclipse, if this is of interest to anyone, is at 4:41 p.m. Sunday the 21st, this weekend. So in the afternoon, the eclipse actually occurs. Now, we won't see it. In a solar eclipse, the sun gets blocked out. Where the eclipse is going to be most potent and visible, if they have clear skies, is in northern India. So eclipses occur over certain parts of the Earth. Lots of reasons for that we won't go into. And eclipses are part of long series of eclipses over 1,000 years, like 1,200 years often. So this eclipse is going to be most potent over northern India and actually over Mount Kailash. And if anyone, it sort of peaks right over Mount Kailash, which many consider to be the crown chakra of the world. And it's spiritually like the most important place for Buddhists and for many Hindus. they call it the Mountain of Shiva. There's lots and lots of stories around Mount Kailash, and it's a place of pilgrimage and so on. So that's pretty interesting stuff. But what's even more significant about this eclipse is that it occurs at 0 degrees of Cancer. And we did touch on this last time, but because we're in it now, let's kind of look at that a bit more fully. Now, 0 degrees of Cancer, we know that for the last 4 weeks or so, the sun's been moving through Gemini, really activating that Gemini mind, communication, information energy, which is already a big story this year anyway. And on the 21st at 7:43 a.m. our time, the sun will leave Gemini and go into the sign of Cancer. So the sun will enter 0 degrees of Cancer. And then all the Cancerians will be having their birthday for the next 4 weeks. So happy birthday to all the Cancerians. But what's going to happen on the same day in the afternoon, the moon, because the moon's now in Gemini, the moon is coming in behind the sun and will join the sun at 0 degrees of Cancer, making a new moon. But this time it makes a new moon total solar eclipse at 0 degrees of Cancer.
When the sun and moon come together, like I know sometimes in other, like when they're opposite, there can be like a push-pull, can't there? But when they come together, what does that do?
Good question. That's a great question. It's the sun and the moon represents sort of masculine yang energies. The sun, the solar light. You know, none of us would be here without the sun. The sun's the center of the solar system, and there are squillions of suns in the universe. Many, you know, unbelievably larger than ours. And the sun represents our own inner light and spirit. You know, it's a very important thing. And the moon connects us more to the feminine realms, to soul, to our own personal inner connection to the divine, we could say. That sense of soul that we all know inside. It's also to do with our feelings. Astrologically, we look to the moon when we're trying to understand our relationship to our mother and our emotional needs and so on and so on. And the sun is more like a father spirit energy. You know, there's many ways we can speak of these things. When they come together, what we know every new moon for about 3 nights, we're in the dark of the moon. There's no moonlight in the sky. You know, because the moon has now been kind of almost swallowed up by the light of the sun, but they're traveling together for 3 nights. And so it's the dark of the moon, and it's the end of the previous 4-week cycle and the beginning of a new 4-week cycle to begin. And you could say that the masculine yang spirit energy is literally, it's like a marriage. It's like a sacred marriage, a union of the divine feminine and masculine, soul and spirit. And psychologically, we can speak of, like, I'll give you a little example. Very often people who are born with a new moon in their chart at the time of a new moon, when the sun and the moon are really close together, quite often what I've found is as a child, they experience their parents as sort of being quite united, sort of on the same page. When we're born with the sun and moon in opposition, often you'll hear like, my parents were so different, you know, they were like opposites. And all these things have a strong imprint on us then throughout our life. There's so, you know, we could speak for hours about all the meanings of this, but it's the end of a cycle. So we're now coming right to the end of this current 4-week lunar cycle and birthing a new 4-week cycle in a different sign. So the last one was in Gemini, this one's in Cancer. But why this one is so important is that this new moon forms an eclipse. So the energy is magnified, intensified. The significance of it being at 0 degrees of Cancer is incredible, because this degree is the solstice. Every year when the sun enters Cancer at 0 degrees, we have in the southern hemisphere our winter solstice, and in the north it's the summer solstice. And the solstice and equinox points are like the 4 cardinal points of the year. They're very important. And so to have this total solar eclipse on the solstice makes it particularly potent and important. And I feel that because it's occurring at its peak over Mount Kailash and the whole of northern India, you know, Kathmandu, northern India, Tibet, Delhi, that whole region, particularly over Mount Kailash, I think, you know, that's an area that will be really highlighted.
But it's also that eclipse is also going through, like it's an arc, isn't it, above the sky?
It's an arc.
China.
That's right.
Through
and through, it sort of starts through the Middle East and Arabia, and then curves over northern India, and then goes through southern China, and then and that's the area of the world that is being really highlighted and sort of activated by the energy of this eclipse. That's right.
It goes through Middle Africa too, into Ethiopia.
It does. It does. That's right. It actually starts in Africa. That's correct. That's right. So so they're the sort of areas to watch, and eclipses, you know, as someone once said years ago, like a new moon eclipse is like a new moon on steroids, and a lunar eclipse like a full moon on steroids. Like the energy is wrapped up and really so much bigger, because they really are portals. And like the ancients used eclipses to predict things like, you know, a major battle, the birth of the new king, the death of the king, you know, some key important piece that was going to go on in the kingdom, you know, in the society at the time. And
to buckle up.
To buckle up. It's like, how many times have we said that this year? That's right.
There's so much happening so quickly. It's, you know, it's like a cork bouncing around on the ocean. It's just, and I just get these images every time we talk about the astrology of this year. It's an image of these huge, the oceans heaving, and you know, and the storms that can happen in the oceans. It's like,
that's a brilliant image, because over the last weeks we've had Mars conjunct Neptune in Pisces, you know, so that's a fantastic image. Cheryl. Yeah, that's right. Very tumultuous and moving and dramatically moving on a daily basis.
Yeah.
You think, God, what next? Well, here comes the next.
It's like Neptune coming out of the ocean with his
trident, and he's moving the seas, and he's got his that's right.
And lightning sprouting out from it.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he's a powerful god.
And all that delusion going on with it.
Veils of illusion and delusion, absolutely.
Yes.
And the thing, I wanted to bring in Cancer. So what is the significance of this eclipse and this solstice in the sign of Cancer? You know, Cancer is a water sign. I've just been speaking of the seas and the oceans, and Cancer has a tremendous affinity with the seas. You know, it's the totem we use for Cancer is the crab that lives on the shorelines. You know, it belongs in the water and the land, lives in, you know, in the tidal areas, can walk on land, swims in the water. And we know this sign is very much about our personal world. It's very, very personal in Cancer. It's a water sign. It's governed by the moon. The tides are governed by the moon. Over my life, I've met and known a few fishermen, or just, you know, men who love to go and fish, and, you know, just go out in a boat and just fish. And they've usually got quite strong Cancer energy in their chart. They want to be out on the mother ocean, out on the sea, under the moonlight, go fishing at night, you know, and catch the fish in that kind of, and this deep sense of connection. And they understand about tides. They know about moon cycles. They know when's a good time to go fishing. There's this connection to the natural rhythms and the cycles of nature and the moon and so on. But Cancer is also the sign of the Great Mother. And the Great Mother is a source of succor and nourishment and love and protection for her children. And anyone watching this who is a mother knows that feeling of, I will do anything to protect my child. And that's the nature of this sign. It has a natural protective instinct. And it's very much about nurturing. So I feel one of the themes for us in this coming 4-week period that's being very activated right now by this eclipse and solstice is, how do I nurture myself in these times of tumultuous change? And here in Australia, we are now in the dead of, it's not really the dead, well, we don't really have a dead of winter. It's not that wintry in Australia. In the southern parts, it can get really cold.
It can be. I've had the fireplace on at times.
Yes, I've got my heater on right now beside me. That's right. So it is a time for us to draw in, because this is the time of the shortest days, isn't it? That the nights closing in early and so on. So we want to sleep in. And I would be really encouraging people over these next few weeks, if it's possible for them, for you, given our busy lives and so on, to really make it a priority to take time out to rest, to be quiet, to, get domestic, clean your house, get your house clean, just get a good stock of food in, maybe do some cook, like Cancerians love to cook, because the instinct in Cancer is to mother and feed people, and to have that natural relationship with food. So we might even see this going on in the world, like issues around food.
I've been watching cooking classes left, right and centre.
That is fantastic. I love watching cooking shows because my moon is in Cancer. When I want to just switch off from my busy mind and that working mind, and I want to just sit down and have a nice cuppa or a bit of lunch, I'll just turn on a cooking show because I just find it enjoyable and relaxing.
Yeah, very restful and relaxing.
Very.
I think it's about that creativity, isn't it? And just looking at something so basic to us.
That is so basic to us, that urge to want to, nourish ourselves with beautiful food and understand food and get creative. That's right. So it's also a sign that's about family and ancestors and family connections and bonds and disconnections. So these are the themes while the sun's going through Cancer. But because this eclipse is in Cancer now, it's going to be an ongoing theme for the next, well, even for the rest of the year, because eclipse energies have an impact on the following months and on the world. So, and America, this just comes to mind now, is a Cancerian country. The sun, America was born on the 4th of July when the sun was in Cancer. So, they talk about the homeland, homeland security. What a Cancerian phrase that is. So
this eclipse is really, America's already been strongly impacted already,
Very.
This could go either way, couldn't it? It could sort of bring people together and say, come on, we've all got to get together, like Scott Morrison's been saying here, we're all in this together, or disconnect that sense.
Exactly. So that's right. So it's not just our blood family, although it very much is our blood family, but it's our sense of family and belonging, and do you feel like you belong in your family, in your extended family, in your community, in your country you live in this world? Do you have a sense of belonging and that there's a place for you? Ultimately, the only true home is inside ourselves. It truly is our only true home. That's on a spiritual level. But as human beings, we have a need to feel nurtured and safe and at ease and at home in our life and in our bodies and in our culture. And not everyone can say that.
That sort of relates to Aquarius too, which is in the background, don't you think? Because I find people who have that often don't feel like they belong.
Exactly.
looking for a place to belong.
Exactly, because Aquarius and Cancer are very, very, very different. They have nothing similar that connects them. They're like, it's like they're sort of from two different planets, you could almost say.
Yeah.
And because in Aquarius, the sense of belonging is to the universe, to all of society, to humanity. But in Cancer, we have to honor the very human need to feel an emotional soul connection to my immediate personal life. And that's very specific for everyone. That's not going to look the same for everybody. You know, what I think a question for us all to be asking is, what really nourishes and nurtures me? And we could all look at, if we know it, what house of our chart 0 degrees of Cancer sits in. And mine just happens to be in the 11th house, which is an Aquarian energy of, you know, community and humanity and friends, and this sense, natural sense of, there's the personal family and then there's this greater family. Yeah. So, you know, we're all different in the way we relate to those different themes. We really all are. It's very particular for each of us.
Yeah.
It's personal and impersonal in those two signs. You know, Cancer is so personal and Aquarius is so impersonal.
So that sense of tribal belonging, that's very much in our first chakra, isn't it?
Yes, it is actually.
You know, it's about our right to be in the world, who we're connected with. I can go into the second chakra when you're talking about one-on-one relationships, but in that group tribe, is that very much first chakra? And
yes, I think it is, because if we don't feel like we belong and that we've been nourished in our life, we can feel so unsafe actually, and not feel sort of safe and secure in our bodies and in our life. And certainly for people who've been really traumatized, it's very difficult for them to really just let go and relax, because something's always vigilant and on guard. And I think, I was just thinking about this the other day, I do feel in many ways probably that humanity is going through a kind of a collective trauma at the moment.
Yeah.
And we're all navigating that in different ways, you know. It's quite a traumatic time.
Yes, it is. And a lot of people are having problems with sleeping.
Yes.
Their stress levels are much, the tolerance levels are much lower. You know, just navigating through all that, worries about the future. And,
that's right.
And the safety, like you're saying about Cancer,
that's right.
Secure and safety.
Yeah. Because everything's being disturbed, you know, like that ocean image you had, you know, everything's being disturbed. And yeah, because, you know, in Cancer we sort of want to close in, you know, it's that thing of, if you had a really busy day and you've been out and about and you come home and close the door behind you, you know, and just throw off some of your clothes and go, oh, that feels better. Now I'm at home and I can relax, you know, that sense of comfort. Not everyone's home life is like that though.
Yeah.
For some people, home is a place of trauma and anxiety.
Yeah, and they want to get out.
Completely. So this is and, you know, with lockdown, I just dislike that word so much, but it's the word that we use, you know. It's, you know, some people are feeling trapped in their homes. And some people are loving it and enjoying that sense of feeling enclosed and being able to just take time to nourish themselves more. So these are all things that are going to really be up for people. And for some, there's going to be big things happening in their family life, perhaps with a parent, child, family relationships. Things will be happening, you know, significant things. And around eclipses, it's quite common for souls to arrive, new souls to arrive. Not that souls are really new, but, you know, souls to arrive and souls to depart around eclipses. Yeah, so it's a potent weekend. And then, of course, there's a whole series of astrological movements, just one after another, following on from the eclipse.
Right. Well, let's go on from that then. Can we?
Okay. Okay.
And like I say, just bring it on and get it over and done with. Come on.
I know. I know. Like, this is the year that had to happen. You know, humanity, this is required for all of us, individually and collectively. And it just is. It's just, it was always going to happen in some shape or form. So a deep level of acceptance is somehow helpful here, you know, and we can sort of perhaps relax a little more, you know, deep inside. We just go, okay, this is happening, this all needs to happen, and you know, let's just stay as conscious as we can through it.
Yes.
Yeah. So 2 days after the solstice eclipse, on the 23rd, Neptune, the planet we just referred to, will turn retrograde. So what that means, he's already stationary. So when a planet, and I'll say again, planets don't actually change direction. It's based on what we perceive in the sky from the viewpoint of Earth. But they have a clear impact. You just got to observe it over the years and know, yeah, that's actually really happening. So Neptune has now slowed down over the last couple of weeks, slowed right down, and is now kind of at a standstill. And on the 23rd, actually very, very slowly begins to move backwards at 20 degrees of Pisces, almost at 21 of Pisces, another water sign like Cancer. And he will be retrograde for about 5 months. That's normal. This happens every year when Neptune turns retrograde. So many, many people will be born during a Neptune retrograde phase. It's not uncommon, you know, it's just, it's frequent thing.
So how do we see that manifesting, Bubula?
Well, what I find, when these very slow moving planets, outer planets, are in that week or two period when they're slowing down and changing direction, and particularly around that day or two, the energy of that planet is particularly strong and noticeable. It's like its presence is felt and experienced. So Neptune, on the one hand, is very much about illusions and fantasies and delusions and all the veils of illusion that go on in this world that we live in, and the sense of overwhelm. This is such, whenever people are having strong Neptune transits over a period of a year or two, they feel overwhelmed. Because it's like when the seas, you know, like if we were in a boat and there was a tremendous storm for like 48 hours in the seas, like, we can only surrender to that. There's very little you can actually do. You know, surrender is the way. And so, you know, letting go, just, okay, I've just got to go with these tumultuous tides and ride them. I was visiting some friends yesterday on the coast, and one of them, she's a surfer. And we were walking along the beachfront, and she's just, you know, obsessed with the waves and watching. And I loved it too. And she's telling me this, and this. And, you know, just watching these men, though, mainly men out there yesterday, and riding these waves. And that's the analogy.
Yeah.
You know, and and this huge wave comes, and they're up and they're riding the thing. And some of them are getting swamped. And so we can feel completely swamped by these huge waves that are going on. And we can feel really tired, like overwhelmed, exhausted, tired, I just need to stop. And that's what I'm feeling like for the next few days with all of this. I'm just not scheduling anything, being really busy, taking some time out, you know, a pause. So this is a really good idea if people have that available to them. Sometimes that's not the case. If, you know, people are looking after little children, life goes on, and you just have to do your best in that, try and deschedule as much as is possible, and make time for more Neptunian activities, which could be play lovely music, lie in the bath for an hour, light some candles. I know that sounds corny, but truly it makes a difference. If you live near the sea, go to the sea, just sit, walk, be quiet, watch the ocean. meditate. You know, it's a very high vibrational spiritual energy, Neptune. It connects us to the divine, to the mystery of the divine. And I think sort of acknowledging that, I mean, I've had some moments like this where I just go, I don't know. I don't know. Sort of just go like this. I don't know. And I think that's what Neptune's very much about. Because it's not, it doesn't function through the rational thinking mind. We're not going to get intellectual answers to anything through Neptune. We have to intuit, we have to feel, we have to let go, we have to surrender. We have to open ourselves.
Yeah. And when you were talking, I was just thinking about parents of children or grandparents who look after children too, and it can be very overwhelming for them at times. And it's always a good idea to change the children's activities to that, what you're saying, Neptunian sorts of things.
Yes.
Even just getting them to, you can sit and just ask them to put on a play for you.
Yes.
Sort of to be creative and make things up in their mind and play it out. And that way the parents and grandparents get a rest while the kids have a lot of fun dressing up and acting out, you know. So
it's absolutely true. I love that, Cheryl. So, you know, how can we best work with this energy and or even use this energy? So let's get Neptunian.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's very, very creative. My little granddaughter, who's 5, and I spend a lot of time with her, she's so Neptunian, and her creativity and imagination is off the charts. I just go, oh my God, what made you think of that? You know, she just comes up with these incredible stories. And so, absolutely. So I think this is a beautiful opportunity. You know, I paint, you know, put on some lovely music and dance and paint, or whatever is your thing, where you just can let go of all that other stuff for a while and get into this others, because it's a zone.
Yeah.
Get into this other zone, you know, and for some that might be just lying in the bath or going to bed.
Yeah.
If you need to just go to bed for a couple of days.
I think that word you use, opportunistic, is really important. And I think I mentioned this last time. It's about learning to ride the currents.
That's right.
Learning to ride the wave. Don't go against them, go with them.
That's right. That's right. And some will have a real opportunity to that. For others, that's not so available. So you do your best. You find ways to just understand this energy and find ways to be with it, you know, and kind of take the pressure off, if we can, you know, in whatever way that we know how to do that. And look, if you're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, stressed, you've been working really hard, whatever it is, if you need to lie on the couch for 2 days and watch movies, go right ahead. You know, movies are Neptunian. You know, just enter into these other realms where you just don't have to be functional. You know, like, I just don't want to. You know, it's that. Like I just need a few days where I'm not functioning. You know, in my normal kind of stressed way.
So what else does June have for us?
Okay. Now we've spoken a few times about Venus retrograde. You know, we've been in this very important and interesting Venus retrograde in Gemini phase over the last 40 days. And she's now gone from being the evening star, disappeared from the night sky as she sort of journeyed underground in the lower realms, and has emerged again, has just recently begun to emerge again in the morning skies before sunrise as the morning star. She, on the 25th, 2 days after Neptune changes direction, she changes direction and turns direct again. So Venus sort of completes her retrograde phase, and it's been an important one. And so the energy of Venus, which is about love and relationship and connection, and our connections to people, something of that energy is now going to begin to, in the coming days and weeks, as she gathers momentum in her forward movement, something's going to open up and free up. And I think relationships are going to be finding themselves in a new place. And some relationships during this Venus retrograde phase have been through a lot of stress and a lot of challenges. Some relationships will actually be completing and ending. Or they've processed a lot of things and find them. And then I'm talking about all relationships, not just couples, including couples, but our relationships with friends, and what's going on in the world is really having an impact on people's friendships and connections, and people are sort of aligning themselves with different points of view and going, well, I don't know whether and people are sort of going through their Facebook friends lists, have you noticed, and going
off the list.
Off the list. A lot of people are finding that, no, we're not in alignment, and I don't need or want that in my field, So that's been happening, and so there's going to be a change now around that Venus energy in our relationships and our sense of our own personal values, because she's very much about what I really value and what is dear to me and true to me. And we've kind of been sifting through a lot of things, I think, during this Venus retrograde period, and it's been going on around communications and information and ideas. So on the 21st, the solstice, the eclipse on the 23rd, Neptune. So really over this coming week, it's not just one thing, it's a number of things, because even though Venus technically turns retrograde on the 23rd, she's stationary. Neptune's stationary now, Venus is stationary now. So they're very much a part of this eclipse theme. And then 3 days later on the 28th, the planet Mars, which is the sort of opposite complementary energy to Venus. Venus is the feminine goddess energy. Mars is the masculine warrior spirit. Mars on the 28th enters Aries, his own sign, which he will do every 2 years.
Because I'm thinking Venus reaches out and wants to create relationship, whereas Mars can come in and destroy a relationship, can't it?
Well, he can, because this is the god of, in mythology, when we look at the Greek Roman mythology of Mars, he's Mars in the Roman mythology and he's Aries in the Greek tradition. And so Aries is Aries. So Mars Aries, he was the god of war and he lived for battle. He was created for battle, and he's always ready for battle, with his sword. The sword is kind of a symbol, if you like, for Mars and Aries. And he's got his battle armor on, and he's kind of just always kind of ready for the next battle. So we can speak of battle here literally. And let's face it, the history of humanity on this planet has been one of just endless wars and conflicts. Seems to be just built into, it has been. But we can also look at battle as more of a metaphor, and there are many ways that we experience battles in our lives. We do battle with ourselves. We do battle in our relationships. We battle with certain issues, and we might be watching what's going on in the political arena, and it can really stir up. How many times have we kind of just stood up from the couch and maybe yelled at the TV because a politician has just said something that's really, fired us up? So it's
I say, or walk past and going, what?
That's right. Did you really? That's right. So it's a very dynamic energy. Mars is an energy of action, and psychologically, what's the emotion of Mars? It's anger. Anger, frustration, and then wanting to act on it and strike out.
Yeah.
Now, I take the view, I think Mars It's easy to think of Mars as only problematical. But I don't see it only in that. Yes, it can be very problematical. Absolutely. It can cause a lot of trouble. He's a troublemaker. Yes, and I was saying that he absolutely is the cause, if you like, of conflict and anger and war and battle and violence. I was about to use that word because I think that's important with Mars. We need to really see that for some people, their Mars energy only knows how to respond and react in a physical action of violence. So that has to be acknowledged about the energy of Mars. But as we grow in consciousness, and that includes a lot of healing and a lot of personal transformation of our own wounds, because a very, very wounded, traumatized person, one of the ways they might respond to life, and that would, an astrologer would look at their chart and go, yeah, I would expect this person would tend to respond in that way as a response to trauma and frustration and unhealed wounds and so on, would be to lash out and strike out, and perhaps even in violence, physical, because Mars in us is quite a physical, it has to move the body. At its very best though, when there's been a lot of healing work and transformation and growth in consciousness, Mars can actually be an energy that's very, very beneficial and important to us, because sometimes we actually need to get angry. Sometimes I think anger is very justified, it's a natural response to a situation that just feels unacceptable.
Yeah.
No, I'm not standing for that. That is not okay for me, that you treat me like that or speak to me in that way, or and so Mars can help us, particularly when that's not something that's been easy for us. When our Mars energy comes up, it can help us to just stand up for ourselves and push back, rather than just give in all the time and allow someone else to dominate. Do you see it? And control us in some way. So Mars is an important energy. It's the warrior within, and the warrior can be an energy that's really like a warrior of the light, literally, fighting the good fight against oppression and domination and control in whatever form it shows up in our lives and in the world. But it can also be very, very misused.
And I think that to me, Mars it sort of represents the bulldozer.
Yes.
If someone who's got a lot of that energy is very bulldozer type.
And the bully.
Yes, but at the same time, Mars can also ask us to put up those boundaries, and it's on the other side of it. No, not happening.
That's right. That's right.
I also think of Mars as quite pioneering. Actually, it's the energy that drove the early pioneers.
It is. It really is. So Mars and Aries, the sign of Aries, and anyone watching who is an Aries or knows have quite a strong Aries kind of theme in their whole birth chart, it's that energy that its nature is to push forward into the new, like the birth of a child, like the whole action of birthing is a Mars Aries activity. And some might even call it kind of violent in a way, in a natural sort of a way, in that, like, it's not like sometimes it can be, but by and large, it's not like a gentle, pretty, it's dynamic, and the body sometimes is being torn, and I'm getting graphic here, but, and there's blood, and then out of the womb comes this new life. And this is Aries. It's the birthing of the new, the pioneering spirit that is always pushing forward. Boldly goes where no man or woman has been before. My favorite words from Star Trek, the Starship Enterprise. These are Aries words, and the two stars of that show, not Star Wars, what is it? what did I say? Star Wars?
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Mm.
The two stars were both Aries. It couldn't be more perfect.
Mm.
You know, this pioneering, these warriors, these starship enterprise that boldly goes where no man and woman has been before, and that's what Aries does. So
you're still talking about the first the first series with William Shatner.
That's right.
And the other one?
And Leonard Nimoy.
Yes. Oh, okay. They're both Aries. Right?
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing. So, and Mars is the planet that carries that energy. So, because the reason I'm really paying attention to this movement of Mars into Aries on the 28th is that normally Mars would move through any given sign for 6 weeks. But because later in the year, in September, Mars is going to turn retrograde and be retrograde for 10 weeks, that means he goes through this period. He's moving pretty quickly now, but then he will just start to slow right down. He'll slow down, he'll slow down, come to a stop in September and turn back for 10 weeks and then slowly move forward again. And it won't be until I think sometime in January before he actually exits Aries. So Mars goes retrograde every 2 years. But this time, on top of everything else that's happening in 2020, the universe, in all its extraordinary wisdom, has decided, okay, Mars, you've got a job to do. You've got a role to play this year. You're going to do this long retrograde journey in your own sign. You ready? And he goes, you bet I am. So, you know, this is the warrior energy. And I think in his own, powerful in his own sign. You know, when a planet's in its own sign, it's like fully able to be itself, for better and for worse.
So let me ask you a question about that. When Mars or any planet, but when it's going through a sign, but it's slowing down to coming to a stop and then retrograding, it's actually getting more powerful.
Yes, it is.
Not counterintuitively, it's getting more powerful the slower it goes before it goes. Yeah, right.
It really is, and it's really making its presence felt. So, and because Mars has a natural instinct for conflict. Now, I've actually observed, I have some, you know, strong Mars energy in me. It's in my family. I see it around. I have a lot of Aries friends, and I love the energy of Aries actually, but it can come at you like really, you know, so it's so direct. It's it's the energy of a sword or a spear, bang, single pointed. It's not messing about, you know, it just goes there. And
to the jugular.
It can absolutely.
Sometimes.
It can absolutely, you know, it really is the energy of that warrior with his sword ready. I'm ready to go, you know. And forgot where I was going with that, but that's all right. So Mars will make his presence really felt when it's in that kind of whole period of moving towards the retrograde. It slows down, so it makes its presence felt very strongly. And in the world, we will see a heightening of the eruption of Mars energy. We got a little taste of it when all the riots and then the marches happened. So it's like pressure sort of builds, and then there comes to a point where something in us goes, no, and we have, or yes, and we have a natural urge and impulse to act on it. Because we can't just sit back and do nothing when Mars is really active. And if we do, if we try and ignore this and go, oh, I don't like aggression, I don't like anger, because that's often an issue, particularly for women, you know, because you might have had some, you know, like it's not pretty always what Mars is up to. And, you know, we're called to, you know, step up, stand up, take some kind of action in whatever way, so we can consider what part of our chart, like what house we have Aries. And that area of our life is going to get really activated by this Mars energy. And it can be, I really want to emphasize, it can be incredibly beneficial. Because at its very best, Mars is a very clean energy. It will cut through, it just cuts through all the confusion and the uncertainty and the anxiety, and it just cuts straight through. And we go, and sometimes it's a really clean, hot anger that comes up that helps us to cut through and get really, really clear about something. And we go, no, not having that, not doing that, or I have to do something about this.
Is it sort of the end of, like if people have a long fuse and they just get to the end and go, nah, no more? Or
That's right.
Is that it?
That's right. And so there's an action that happens, so a lot is, and Mars and Aries are quite a fast energy. Pardon me, I'll take a little sip of my water. It moves really quickly and it's very direct and very immediate, very now, and it doesn't think. Mars doesn't sit down and work out a strategy, or some Marses do, depending on what sign you natally have Mars in. But Mars in Aries isn't going to sit down and think it through and have rational discussions and go, well, what would be the best? Mars in Aries isn't going to operate like that. It's just now do it.
So it's not a strategist.
No, it's an action. It's an action energy. You know that phrase, just do it? That, like, any Aries or strong Mars person would go, yep, I'm all over that. Just do it. And then you kind of, the way it works is that Mars in Aries energy kind of works it out on the go and responds in the moment to now this, now this, now this, now this. It doesn't premeditate or, cognitively try and figure it out. It just has to act. So this whole piece that I'm talking about for the whole second half of the year, and we will certainly be talking about it more, during those periods. It actually begins on the 28th. And so if we wanted to pay attention and notice, we're going to see it in the world. It's going to be visible in the world. And we're going to experience it in our own lives, And because up until that point, like now, Mars is in Pisces. So Mars is spending this sort of 2-month period in Pisces, which is not a big action, high energy sign. So it's like, this is a thought, it's like Mars is kind of taking a breather. I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to float on the waters and kind of go with the flow a bit here in Pisces, and I'm kind of relaxing and getting myself ready for, for the work I have to do.
Gathering up all that energy inside. Land.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's a wonderful way to understand the relationship between Pisces and Aries, because they're two signs next to each other. In Pisces, we kind of get to chill. And rest up, It's like the general saying to his troops, just as a metaphor, okay, everybody, you've got 2 days off. I want you to rest up, prepare your weapons, like just chill, just relax. We're going to meditate, and then at the appointed time, we'll be ready for the action. So I don't want to cause alarm in people. This is a natural energy. This is a natural, and it's an energy that lives in every single one of us. And if we have lots of issues and anxieties about the energy of Mars, this can be an opportunity for us to connect with the light of the warrior. And because if we look at sort of archangels, Michael, the archangel Michael, is always depicted with a sword, the sword of light. And I think if we remember that energy and that sword of light, like, what is our weapon in Aries? What kind of a weapon? Is it just a brutal club that just, or is it refined? Is it connected to the divine, to the spiritual purpose, to spirit, to soul, you know, and is actively taking on a participation to sort of fight the good fight, you could say. You know? So I think if we consider Mars in that light, but we can also experience during this period those times when we're just really pissed off and we find ourselves in conflict with people, and we can't spiritually bypass with this energy.
Yeah.
You know, like it's very easy to, you know, if we're kind of spiritually inclined to want everything to be sweet and nice and love and light, no, Mars won't allow that. Like, we have to get real about this energy, and if we're angry, we're angry, and if we're in a conflict, we're in a conflict. But to keep working with it and processing it and working on clearing and healing all those themes, you know, and conflicts with males, with men. It's a masculine energy.
And or authoritarian.
It can be if that Mars energy is used over people and to dominate people like aggressively, you know, it's like call out the troops, get the army. Now, armies and troops can be used in a very, very positive way. Sometimes that's needed.
Yeah.
So I'm not suggesting that's all wrong, but it can also be used in a terrible way as well.
Yeah.
So everything's like that. Everything's like that.
Yeah. It can go wrong, but doesn't mean.
That's right. So it depends what we're doing with it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's about consciousness in the end. So that's
Is that it for June, please?
So that brings us to on the last day of June.
There's more.
So 2 days late. That's what I mean. It's like one after another, literally. On the 30th, this year we have 3 conjunctions of Jupiter and Pluto. So we're going to get the second conjunction on the 30th. I mean, they're really conjunct now, but they're precisely, and they're both retrograde. So Jupiter is currently retrograde. Pluto is currently in a retrograde, long retrograde period. They both join up on the 30th. And the Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions in Capricorn of 2020 are also important in terms of bringing up important issues and themes around truth, bringing it up from the shadows and what's really true. You know, it's an important piece of cleaning up the issues around misuse of power. And Jupiter's job is to shine the light of truth down, deep down into the shadow realms with Lord Pluto, you know, the Lord of the underworld, that light of truth. Because Jupiter, if we look at it mythologically, is an upper god. You know, it's the god of Mount Olympus. But his tool, if you like, his emblem is bolts of lightning. And he's, at his very best, Jupiter is about truth and justice and the lawgiver. And there are the laws of man, which can be used to oppress and control and dominate. And there are the laws of the universe, which are irrefutable laws. So that's kind of a big piece of what's going on this year. And this conjunction, when they're both retrograde, is doing some very potent work right now.
Can you see that playing out anywhere on the world stage?
I do, and I have my own certain views, and I'm kind of putting a high value this year on not letting my views be locked in place. I'm trying to stay really flexible and fluid with it, because there's a lot we don't know. So I think a lot is going on behind the scenes. I think there's a lot of warriors of light and truth working behind the scenes in all kinds of ways. And a lot is playing out on the public stage that's very kind of confusing in many ways and quite concerning, you know. But I think a lot is also going on behind, I think a great deal. I think there is a massive battle going on the planet now. I think it's been brewing for a long time.
I think when you mention that light of truth, I'm also thinking to the media
Yes.
How the truth has been manoeuvred and manipulated, and used, or incorrect information is being used to make people think in a certain way, all those sorts of things, you know. And it's no surprise that the media, mainstream media, is going downhill very fast, where we've seen some of the newspapers being shut down,
Yes.
you know, permanently or temporarily.
Yeah.
The hard print's gone out the window.
Yeah.
I know that's also to do with Gemini, with information, but just like getting to the hard truth. I'm just wondering whether out of all of this, with Pluto there being the end of things, whether there'll be a new breed of journalists being born.
Wouldn't that be incredible?
Wouldn't
Like
it be lovely?
the honourable profession
Yes.
of the investigative journalist who is totally free
Mm.
to do what he really wants, needs, and is supposed to do.
Yep.
Investigate the truth and be free to do that.
Yes.
Would just change the world in so many ways, you
Yep.
know. And I think there are very sincere and good journalists who are endeavouring to do that, but when they're kind of employed by mainstream media, it's very not easy for them to do that.
Not these days. I don't think real journalism has gone on for a while.
I agree with you. And this is very much a Gemini Sag Sagittarius issue, which we've spoken of before in the light of the nodes now in Gemini Sag, but Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so Jupiter is very connected to that. And so I think we're just going to continue all year on a daily basis, revelation after revelation after revelation after, and some of the revelations are, well, is that actually true? So, you know, we just have to stay as open as possible and keep our inquiring minds as available as possible, but to not shy away from confronting these things, you know, like that term spiritual bypassing. I think spiritually we must confront these really difficult issues, as well as do our best. This is just how I see it and what I'm endeavouring to do, stay connected to the good and the light and the truth, but at the same time having the willingness to confront what's going on in the dark shadows, because it's not pretty.
Interesting.
Yeah. But not to get sucked in and get lost in that world, because that can really bring our energy down, and that's not helpful either. So it's quite a dance, really.
Yeah. Do you think too that Jupiter conjunct Pluto is also about, because it's in Capricorn, so, you know, it's business, government, economy, all those sorts of things. But what about in our personal lives, in the light of our own truth?
To me, Capricorn, one of the most important qualities of Capricorn is integrity and authority. And so there's the misuse of authority and power that we see with Capricorn, which is the world, in the world. But this is about looking to our own inner authority, you know, and standing in the light and the potency of our own inner authority and integrity. And so we're all actually being asked to clean up our own issues around integrity and authority, and to not just kind of blindly go off on knee-jerk reactions and opinions based on often not anything particularly valid.
Yeah.
Or any hard evidence, you know, just opinions based on what we've been programmed to think or believe and so on. So on a personal level, it's not just about the world and the collective, it's every single one of us. We have to acknowledge our own role and participation in the world we have all collectively created and contributed to. It's not just them. Every single one of us has participated in and collectively contributed to the world that we live in now. So I think each of us have to take responsibility, which is a Capricorn word, to look at the ways we've not been integrous and the ways perhaps we've played the system to our own personal benefit, and not always been so honourable. Because this is what Capricorn is calling for. That's Capricorn at its absolute best. and Pluto's job is to dredge up from the shadows the misuse of all of that, you know. So it's a big, big, important story. So I think this Jupiter-Pluto conjunction now is a real key that's going on at this time of the eclipse and these other important pieces I've mentioned. So it's just, yeah, it's a critical time, a really critical time. And then on the 2nd of July, dear Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, re-enters Capricorn, his own sign. So he's not finished with Capricorn yet. So he's making his way back. It's like, you know, he went into early Aquarius and we got a glimpse of that Aquarian energy, and now then he retrograded and he slowly moved back through those very early degrees of Aquarius. And on the 2nd of July, he moves back into his own sign.
Wow. We're going to have a lot to talk about next time.
Oh my God, I know. That's right. And then that will be followed on a few days later by the next lunar eclipse. So during this May period and very early July, there's actually 3 eclipses.
Yeah.
So that's another eclipse. So I think that's enough to look at, to consider over the next few weeks, because it's not just, sometimes you get, you know, a period of time over a number of weeks or a month or so where there's kind of 1 or 2 things happening significantly astrologically, but not now. Now it's packed with significant movements of planets that are all playing their role in different ways. They're all different. And so they're kind of functioning in different ways in our own psyche, in our own consciousness, in our own personal world, and in the world. Like they're moving in different arenas and bringing in different energies. So it's kind of hard to decipher it all in a way at any given moment. You know, was that this or this or this? They're all going on together.
Yes, and I think that's the challenge with astrology sometimes, is sometimes you can't fully understand it or foresee it until it actually happens.
That's right.
Go, now I can see why that
That's
happened,
right.
when it happens.
And sometimes it's then also a little bit later you look back and okay, that was that.
Yes.
But for now, and this is contributing to, for many people, just feeling completely overwhelmed.
Yes.
And this, I think, is a very good reason for us, as much as we are able, to practice the art of trying to just stay present now. In the now, we're simply responding to life right now, because that's really all we've got.
That's right.
When we go into incredible anxiety trying to figure it all out, you know, we can drive ourselves crazy, and that's not helpful. So, you know, as Eckhart Tolle said, the power of now. And we understand that and know that and experience that in different ways according to where we're at. But if we can just keep reminding ourselves to come back to, what am I experiencing right now? And often the body is really helpful. Like, oh, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing right now, right here? And move the body, shake the body, get up and walk, or do something nice, or just shift the energy to come back to now.
I read something the other day, and it's for people when they feel overwhelmed, when there's a lot going on, and, you know, just life is bubbling. Bubble. It's like the bubble, toil and trouble. You know, it's like that sort of thing. It's like the cauldron at the moment. And I read something and I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And it said, never underestimate the power of a deep breath, because it reminds you that you are still alive.
Yes. Exactly. That if just that one simple practice and that requires us to be present enough to remember to do that.
Yes.
Because when we're fully in our mind and we're following this and we're doing it, or involved in a difficult situation, we're fully in that. But if we can even stop, simply remember to stop for a moment and go, hit the pause button in that moment. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because in that moment, actually, all is well, really. So thank you. That's perfect. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, great.
And in that, and we can. What helps me a lot is, like, I go for a walk most days, and it's like I must do that. And just to step outside, go for a walk under the sky, whether it's cloudy or sunny, connect with the trees, hear the birds. Like that's a spiritual practice that brings us back to now, reconnects us to what is real, reminds us that life is full of abundance and beauty and magnificence and just utter gorgeousness. And in that, everything is well, like truly. And it's easy for us to forget that when we get so caught up in all the stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important practice, and it requires us to remember, even if it's like 500 times a day.
Yep.
Stop, pause for a moment, breathe, hear the birds.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's enough to digest for what for the next couple of weeks anyway.
It certainly is.
So so thanks for joining me, and thanks everyone for being with us and tuning into the astrology update. And we'll be back in another 2 weeks for the next one. So until then, stay calm, stay peaceful, remember to breathe.
and have moments of joy and happiness and delight, because they are available to us.
Yes. Okay, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.